got a 100-mile update of the ND4s. You know, it's been, I don't even know how long. Let's see, right now it's September 4th. Last month, I can remember, did we launch them last month? Let's find out. We launched them July 27th. I knew it was a couple months ago. It's like a month and a half ago we launched them. A couple months of me actually having a pair to wear. And I've gone around 100 miles. You know, I don't really track. It's not like I'm like, okay, I did 1.5 miles on this trail and this, and this. You know, I wore them around casually, wore them around at the shop, wore them around working down in Mona on the family farm, wore them tons and tons of hikes. I just love hiking. It's so fun. It's a good reason to get out into nature, get a little exercise, give you a reason to wear your boots. And it's something I actually would like to start figuring out how to start getting into more like motivating people to get out and use their boots, because as much as we'd all like to pretend that we like these boots and wear these boots for work, it's solely because these are a tool and this is a piece of equipment for me. We're all lying to ourselves just a little bit with that, because it is fun. You know, it's a piece of art. This is a true handcrafted piece of art to me, and I like wearing it, I like using it, I like feeling the differences. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, despite what some of the people online will say, like, oh, these young hipsters wearing these boots for style. What's wrong with this generation? It's like, guy, you're the one on a style forum critiquing young men's style and how they use their boots. If there's anyone that's a little bit over concerned with style and how products are used, it's you. And so don't let those people bother you. If you like boots and you live in the city, you just want to wear them, you like them, don't let that discourage you, because they can be a really cool tool, not just for equipment, but also to get you in shape, to get you out in nature more, seeing your local community, making some friends in the hiking community. There's so many avenues to finding value in this that it's unfortunate sometimes that so many people online are just like gatekeeping for no reason, and like the irony is completely lost on them. It kills me. But yeah, that's basically how I've been wearing them. Is, you know, casually around, wore them hiking. Probably most was probably the hiking, and so I got some good trail use in them, so I could actually talk more than just like putting around in the shop in them. And if you have no idea what these are, I didn't even intro these. These are the ND4, and we're releasing this video when the relaunch of the cancellation slots, because we sell X amount, and then throughout the manufacturing process, there's always people that cancel. Sometimes I can convince the brands to open up an extra 100 or 50 slots, and so that's what this is. This is going live either the day before or the day of the relaunch of these. Really small quantities though. I don't have an exact number, but it's not the original 500 that we launched. It's not 500. It's somewhere between 50 and 100 probably is my guess. I'll try to convince Nick to open up a few more slots of these, and other than that, you know, the next indie boot's going to be the ND5. So if you like the ND4s, I'm not saying it's your full last chance to get a pair, because sometimes we open up old slots for the previous indie series, but it's your closest shot in the foreseeable future. But the cool thing, honestly, the cool thing about this pattern is this pattern works really, really well, and I love it. It shocked me how well this pattern works. And so I guess we'll just kind of start getting into it. My idea is just kind of go over what I love about it, what I don't love about it, and just some notes that you might want to know, anything from sizing to break-in help, you know, a few other things like that. It's also funny, every time we do a video with a brand or collaboration, especially the Pacific Northwest brands, it's like everyone's freaking out. They're like, uh-oh, looks like things are falling apart between Rose, Anvil, and Nix. They're working with JK. And then a month later, uh-oh, looks like it fell apart with JK. They're back in working with Nix. I'm like, or we just have good relationships with all these brands, and these brands love making some of the highest quality goods in the entire world, and they like when a brand, or when we appreciate the hard work and the labor and everything that goes into these, the artistry, and they want to work with us. And so despite like the really odd like conspiracy theories online, we can talk about two brands at the same time. We can collaborate with two brands at the same time, especially when it comes to this pattern, because we launched the Bear Slayers first, and I love the Bear Slayers. They're starting to ship. These boots are just little bobcats, just a little aggressive 4-wheel drive. I just love these boots. You got the flexibility, there's all these fun attributes to them. And one of the best attributes is the flexibility, because we went with the flesh out bison leather because we wanted it to look like bear fur, and like bison leather's way furrier. See all that? And so you get all the stretch and the softness and the conforming of bison leather, but you get the abrasion resistance of that, the flesh out with all the suede fibers popping out, protecting your grain of the better parts of the leather. The one flaw with that, though, is if you got little dainty ankles like me, if you're born with the genetic malformity of lads.
If you or a loved one was diagnosed with
lady ankle disorder,
then you know what I'm talking about, because sometimes this bison can overstretch, and then you have to tie your boots up to where the uppers touch, and then you lose the ability to tighten down even more. And fortunately for me, these didn't get too stretched out. Like, it actually worked really, really well. There's still a little bit of room there, but it can overstretch. It's not ever going to be quite as supportive as a harder leather, because it's this, you know, this is supportive leather because it's like 3.5 millimeters thick, but it's nowhere near as supportive as, like, just for example, you know, the brown wax flesh of the not ND3s. This was like a prototype of the ND3s. But see how much harder that is? Obviously one's broken in, but it's more to get the point across than anything. And so, you know, as far as I knew, there was a continuum of like supportive, rigid, hard to break in, all the way down to soft, unsupportive, like down to like the Thorogood softness is similar to this. And so when it comes to this pattern, it ended up working really, really well, because we used this really, really soft green leather. This is basically like, this is tanned by Seidel. It's tumbled a ton, so it's almost like a glove temper to it. But even so much that it's almost too unsupportive. It's a lot more loose and floppy than the bison, because this isn't bison, this is just regular cow leather, but it's heavily tumbled. And so the whole concept with this pattern was to combine some of the best attributes of the jungle boot with the best attributes of the Pacific Northwest boot to make a truly unique boot. And one of those things was trying to combine the flexibility of the canvas upper with that, because if you remember, I'll just go grab the boot. Now I think I have all the sample boots. Trying to combine that flexibility you get from this canvas without any of the negative aspects of canvas being too flexible, being a little bit more fragile. It can tear away from the leather. That's why in these further versions down the road, they added the strap here, they reinforced this. So I want to take that same concept of adding a flexible material in with a more structured and more rigid material to try to get the flexibility without it overflexing, to get the light and the thermal regulating of canvas with still having some water protection of the black leather. And it works so good. It works like a charm, because the beautiful aspect of this is this frame around here, this exoskeleton that is essentially like if you took this boot and then you drop this exoskeleton over top of it, that's all it is. And so it's like a doubly built boot. So you'd think it'd be like twice as rigid and thick and all this stuff, but because we use such a soft, supple leather through these windows here, which is not even windows, these aren't individual parts, this panel runs all the way down like a regular quarter panel. And so this frame supports it, so up here at the top, when you're tying it at the top, it doesn't overstretch and become this giant fanned out thing that doesn't even support you. This strip structures all of it. Same thing across here at the ankle when you need that support, especially when you're walking and you're getting that kind of movement. This really supports that area. So you have some support on the outside when you pull like this and your ankle's bending here, that structures through here while still being able to crumple down through here. Say this leather, just for example, stretches 1/4 inch per inch of length. So what I mean by that is from here all the way wrapped around to here, maybe 8 inches. And so you'd get 2 inches of stretch, versus this is like 3 inches here. There's an inch taken up there, an inch taken up there. So maybe you got like 5 inches total. Now you've got it down to like 1.25 inches of stretch. And so it just stretches a lot less than it would while still maintaining the flexibility and even the thermal regulating, and that was maybe the correct term, was because it is still more breathable. Like you can feel the difference between a really heavy locked in leather that's treated, especially the silicone infused I think it's silicone infused. It's their weather shield leather. you notice the difference. It's not breathable in the same way that like you actually put a fog machine in it and you can see the fog coming out. But I think more than anything, it thermal regulates. So instead of all that heat being trapped in, it regulates through the leather a lot faster because it's a lot looser, it's a lot more open, and it's just not as thick. And so your heat vents off a lot easier with these panels. And so what I'm getting at is it worked. You know, it even took the progress that we made, even from the bare slayers of my personal education with boot making and leathers and uses of things, and took some of the flaws that we noticed in this and improved it for the ND4. So even like in the matter of a couple months, we've already are continuing to improve and iterate. And that's not to say that the bear slayers are worse, because they're just different purposes, or that this is better, that's better. It's one of my favorite parts. I love the learning aspect. I love the designing. I love the prototyping. And so when we find little nuggets of truth that I've never talked about or like learned in the boot world, after talking about boots and shoes for like 500 videos, anything new, I'm like, yes, something new, exciting. Teach me. I want to learn more. It worked, and and you can feel a distinct difference between these two and how much they stretch. And like I said, these don't stretch too much for me, but you can feel the difference. It's a different feel, and I don't really know how to explain it any more than that, but I love it. And honestly, out of these two boots, there's supposed to be a Pacific Northwest boot. Both of these, the idea was it's supposed to be a Pacific Northwest boot pared down, a little more flexible, a little bit more lightweight, a little bit more removing some of the stress points and the pain points from boots. And so these are pretty similar boots, honestly, for their intent. The angle we went at it was completely different. The Bear Slayer was taking my favorite Pacific Northwest platform in JK's OT boots, and then conserving as much of the best Pacific Northwest attributes while just trying to lightly lighten it up and make it a little more flexible and just have the coolest name of all time. Versus the ND4s are a lot more of the taking these contradictory things like the jungle boot and a Pacific Northwest logging boot, combining the two of them into something that hopefully retains the attributes of both without nullifying all their attributes. But the end result is very similar. And the whole thing I'm trying to get at is which do I end up wearing more when I've got them at my place and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go for a hike with this gal, like which ones should I wear for what look the best, and also more importantly, which ones I actually want to wear and which are gonna be the most comfortable and which one's gonna cause me the least pain. I end up wearing the ND4s more. And it's not even something where I've been judging it. If I just look back at how much I've worn these, the ND4s I end up wearing more. And like I said, it's not to say these are worse, because these are more supportive. They're heavier duty. They're more true to the Pacific Northwest boots. You've got these cutouts here. There's pros and cons to each. But that's just to emphasize how much I actually like these and how much I actually end up wearing them, because they're just killer. They're just awesome boots. An even longer roundabout way of saying that I think we're going to continue to keep this pattern to some degree with Nix, because this pattern works really, really, really well. So we might do some different color combinations. We might do some different material combinations. I don't know, we're gonna do some stuff with this, because this pattern is really, really good. And I love it. I love the look of it. Like, it just looks clean. Like, look at this thing. Like, it works so perfectly. Like these hard lines of the alignment patch line up with the hard lines of the heel counter, this tactical heel counter that line up with the sharp lines here of this ankle support, but it still has the arching lines here that match some of the arching lines of the actual quarter panel. I love the look of this boot. And more important, when you guys do get these, when you sew this boot pocket kit on, it looks so much cooler. Like, we posted just a quick reel of me sewing this on. It has I think it's close to 1 million views on Instagram. And it just fits so perfectly. Like, it's equidistant all the way around. It's super easy to sew on because that leather's so soft. And it just looks cool. And I can just carry this little Gerber knife in this boot at all times. And it's already come in handy several times where I'm like, oh, I didn't bring it. Oh, wait, I've got a knife pocket kit on my ND4s. Here's my Gerber, And we send it with 3 different patches. So you could do like the little baby knife pocket this side. Internally on this side, you could do like the boot pocket kit, or the little card slot, stash slot is really what it is. I put my cards in there. But when you're going to a concert and you need a little spot to stash your ID, it's a great spot. Because no one's gonna take your boots off and scan them, or like, oh, what is this? That's just pocket inside of your boot? No one's doing that. They barely scan you at concerts anyway. They just look so cool, you know, like, okay, so that's enough gushing about how cool they look. So now let's start going through some of the components and let's go over like what I liked, what I didn't like. Months and last. I love the months and last. You know, I was so happy to see that NYX was finally introducing a more anatomical last. And I just love it. I think it's comfortable. You know, I was saying the same thing about this. It's anatomical enough that like, even though the big toe kind of comes in slightly, by the time you bulge out the sides of the boot with that extra leather and as you break them in, it straightens out quite a bit because you can just see the difference in how that's bulged out compared to the actual last. Good amount of arch support. You know, the ND4 doesn't have nearly the arch support of like the Bear Slayers or NYX 55 last or their, what is it, 67 last? You know, some of their high arch lasts. This does not have the same amount of arch support, especially being on this wedge sole. It still has way more arch support than like basically any other boot. But if you're expecting Pacific Northwest roll of quarters underneath your arch and taking months to break in, that's not this. It still has arch support, but that's part of the pro of it too, because like I haven't had that huge break-in process of just pounding down that insole leather, especially out here at the lateral side. Because this is a stitch down, you know, you have less material underneath there. And I love the last, you know, but not everyone loves the look. Some people don't like the more anatomical look. I love it. I want my boots to look like feet. I don't love the super pointy stuff. I still like them in cowboy boots, and there's plenty of caveats. But I love the months and last. But so many people were like, hey, do the H&W last, do the H&W last. We wanted the H&W last. I was like, yeah, we see if NYX will do it. And so NYX was very generous in adding another angle of complication to this collaboration by letting people choose between the H&W last, it's a little more pointy, and the months and last. And so we do take opinions from like comments, and when we start launching stuff, we start looking to see like, okay, well, that's a good point. Like, should we introduce the H&W last? Because maybe not everyone wants this last. Oh yeah, that's fine with NYX. It aligns with what we're trying to do. It doesn't compromise the angle or the attempt or the concept of the boot, so let's introduce it. And so, yeah, I love the months and last. That's pretty much it. On the note of addressing comments, you know, there's anytime we do a collaboration, there's just like a wave of hate, and it's just how it goes. You know, we've done enough collaborations that there's just enough people that are trying to cause a stink about anything that we do, especially the collaborations, that it's really, really hard to suss out what's just people trolling and just trying to find a negative angle to take on anything we do, especially collaborations, or is this people that actually want it? Is this like the buyers wanting this, the people are actually gonna buy it, or is it just complaints? And that's one of the harder parts about getting feedback, because it's just hard to know. And the two big pieces of feedback we got was, aside from introducing the H&W last, was the lack of canvas and the drain holes. And both good points. You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting something other than the concept of this boot. But there's good reasons why we didn't do it. You know, canvas is pretty straightforward. Like, canvas has been done 1,000 times. You know, like this is, the Jungle Boot is a canvas boot. Like, that's the whole thing. And so when we're trying to take the canvas boot of the Jungle Boot and we're saying like, okay, how do we infuse the ND series into it? The ND series is all about making the most over-the-top, ridiculous, redundant boot that you can actually wear on a daily basis. That's the ND series, combining it with like the contradictory side of this, which is like less durable, lighter weight, more prone to failure. And that was the coolest angle of this entire thing, is the fact that we didn't use canvas. That's the number one thing I love about this, is we took a lot of the attributes and found a way to still maintain a lot of those without the fail points and the negative aspects of canvas by using this highly tumbled, really soft work boot leather that Seidel made for us. And so people have done it before. You know, Frank's has already done a Pacific Northwest boot that has canvas on the side. They have a really beautiful, like canvas looking boot. It's not as durable. It doesn't fit into the ND series. And maybe the biggest thing of all is like, I wasn't interested in it. And the person that's designing the boot, coming with the angle, you know, I just didn't want to do it. Like, it doesn't tickle my brain in the same way, because so many people have already done it. I really like doing new and different things, because, you know, if we did it on canvas, you know, it's like, oh, cool, Jungle Boot, Frank's basically makes that. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. and we're like, yeah, it's just a jungle boot. It's like a higher quality, which is like slightly different than the regular jungle boot. That's not interesting. This is interesting. Taking things the most extreme, taking new angles on stuff, things that, just doing things that might upset certain people, but might really, really enthuse other people. That's the goal. Because it's like the old saying, like if you're doing something that everyone loves, you're doing something wrong. You want to do something that's disruptive. You want to do something unique. You want to do something new. You want to do something that causes a splash in any way. And doing canvas was not that. And it just didn't interest me. And so there was really no way we're going to do canvas on the ND4 in any way. Maybe in the future we could look at introducing a version of the ND4 pattern with canvas. But leather was the way to go, and I'm glad we stuck with it because of everything I just was gushing about with how well this worked. But it's hard to know, it's hard to know, like, okay, well, is this like people actually want this, or is this just like finding a bad angle to take on this? Ultimately, for the canvas, it didn't matter because I was like, I don't care, like we're doing leather because that's the whole angle, and it's way sicker to do it this way than with just some canvas that will probably fail, and people have already done it. The other one was the vent holes, and so this is another angle on feedback. Like Munson, the H&W last, yeah, it's a good idea. I like that idea from the comments. Let's keep it. The canvas, people wanted canvas, terrible idea. No, we're not doing that. No. Drain holes. That was a good one because we played with this all during the prototyping and like the concepting. I was like, do we do drain holes? Do we do it? And my initial thought was like, well, I don't want drain holes in my boot. Like if I'm gonna buy a $650 boot that's made to be as indestructible as possible, I don't want holes in my boot where dirt's gonna get into, dust is gonna get into. I personally just didn't really want drain holes in any way. And I'm still, ultimately, I'm still glad we don't have drain holes because it would kind of ruin the functionality of the boot. And I just personally don't want holes in my boot. But we still took that criticism or that request, and we're like, okay, well, what would that look like? Can we even do that? And we came up with two solutions to the potential drain hole thing. One was very simple. Just take an eyelet and put a couple eyelets down here at the arch, similar to like the jungle boot. The problem with that is when you introduce big eyelet holes into a boot, little teeny rocks start getting in, dust starts getting in, weeds start getting in, and it's not worth it in any way. Like the extra breathability you get, similar to a pair of Converse, actually. If you ever put this up to the B-roll screen, you're lucky I'm flexible. It'd be exactly this. And so you can see how like dirt and junk and all this would get inside of there, because if you've owned a pair of Converse, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It happens all the time. But we're like, let's just run it down the road. Like maybe that's a cool angle. Maybe it does work. Like maybe if we actually figure out how to add real portholes that will be breathable but not let dirt in, kind of like you see here. I was like, what would that look like? And we ran that down the road, and guess what it looks like? It looks like an $80,000 machine because Nick's looked into it. Schuyler, the CEO that I worked with on this, he called the company. Was like, "Hey, how much does it cost for one of those machines for actual drain holes and not eyelets?" Like $80,000. And I was like, "Well, we don't sell enough of these to justify an $80,000 eyelet hole for 500 boots." And so those are the reasons why we didn't do it. And I'm still fine with it. I see the angle of the drain holes in the canvas, but it's just off for what the actual concept of the boot is and what I wanted. And so that's why we didn't end up doing it, but it's still good feedback. Like it's really, really good. Even though some of it's clearly just like trolling and hate comments and people just trying to take a bad angle, it's still good information. It's still like, oh, okay, I didn't think about that. Let's do a quick internal check. Did we mess up by not doing canvas? Nah, happy with it. Did we mess up by doing drain holes? Maybe. Let's look into it. Oh, okay, it's not feasible. Did we mess up by not doing the H&W last? Yeah, let's offer it. It doesn't detract from the concept of the boot. It still aligns with what I want to do with this. Nick's is able to do it, so yeah, let's do it. And so that's kind of how that works, and it's fun. It doesn't. We do so many collaborations that like we just anticipate it, and honestly, there's a certain. And just generally, it's like we're doing 500 of these, and so people being very upset about 500 of a single boot made by us, and it's limited edition, and like it's like what are you actually upset at? Are you upset that someone called this a jungle boot and we're selling 500 of them? It's like there's more important things to be concerned about, in my opinion. But to each their own. And in the long run, it does nothing but help us out, because one, it gives us great feedback to check ourselves and check our concepts. Number two, it just gives nothing but publicity. You know, it's like the more controversial any of our collaborations are, the more attention we get, the more eyes we get, the more clicks we get, the more purchases we get. It's directly related, you know. Keeps us motivated. It keeps us, you know, it keeps it exciting. It keeps it to a point where, you know, we're like, yes, we're doing the right thing. You know, if we didn't get any pushback, then we're like, what are we doing? Like, are we doing anything of any importance? You know, the pushback lets us know that we're doing something new and different and exciting, and so it's good. In the long run, all the feedback's really good, and even the most hateful hate comments, they end up just being good. You know, it just sells more boots, helps us out, keeps us motivated, gives us good feedback. What about the other components, though? Let's just start from the bottom, work our way up. This outsole, I love this outsole. I love the look of it. You know, it wasn't the Panama sole. It's Nix's Max Comfort Wedge or something. It's a TPU outsole. It's just a skin. And I didn't even know, this is another, going back to the feedback, I didn't even know Vibram made a Panama sole like skin. I had no idea. We talked about like, hey, do we work with them to develop it? So maybe on the next ND boot, we'll put the Panama skin on it rather than this Nix. Because it still looks good. It still like harkens to like the really lugginess and aggressiveness of the actual jungle boot. But I really like this sole. So I'm going to try to get Nix to see if we can get some of those skins for the next version of this, or just even a next drop, you know. I like this pattern enough that I'm going to try to get Nix to revisit this pattern a few times. You know, different structure, different paneling, different colors, different setups. And so that's what we might do on one of the relaunches, if I can convince him. How did this actually wear? It grips really well. It looks really good. It dislodges mud really well. That's like the main reason we went with it, because we wanted the mud to be able to be released a lot better than the V100 or the 132. How did it actually perform? It does seem like I've put some good wear. You know, like I said, I probably walked about 100 miles. It does seem like some of these lugs are wearing pretty fast. Is it so fast that I'm concerned about it? Not really. And I believe it's TPU, so it wears a little bit slower generally. But it is something that I'm going to keep an eye on, because, you know, it is definitely some wear, and you can see like how these ridges are forming in, I'm assuming, how they pour the TPU into the mold, because you can see like the striations of the layers there. So it's holding up, but I'm curious how this is going to last over the long haul. And it grips well, so pretty happy with it. Midsole. This is where I love the ND3, and we pulled a lot of inspiration from the ND3. Let me grab another boot. Because the thing I loved about the ND3 was that foam midsole. It makes the boots so much more comfortable. It's crazy the difference you feel from having a foam midsole compared to just like a harder rubber outsole with like the leather layers that Pacific Northwest boots are known for. It's so comfortable. It's crazy. It's crazy. I won't say crazy like 1,000 times this video. But if you remember, we did the leather insole with the rubber slip sole and the foam midsole, and that's exactly what we just did the exact same thing with this boot. So you get all the compression, the anti-stink, and the value of that leather insole. You get that footprint. It's super durable, but you still get the water protection of that rubber midsole, so it doesn't start degrading. It bonds a lot better to that foam midsole. It's a 360 stitch down construction, so there's no internal stitching, and these boots are so freaking comfortable. These are, I might have already said this, but these are by far the most comfortable indie boot that we've designed, and I'm fairly confident in saying these are the most comfortable Pacific Northwest boots that I've ever worn. I don't think anything even gets close, because you get all the flexibility of the upper that we talked about. You get that squish of the sole, but you still get the flexibility of having like a more simple construction with less nails, less layers, less of the nailing down that you get from more of like a nailed heel. They're the most comfortable Pacific Northwest boots I've owned. You know, that was the goal with the Bear Slayers, and these are still comfortable, but these are more comfortable. You know, these are less supportive than the Bear Slayers, but they're more comfortable than the Bear Slayers. And that's why I end up wearing them more, because they're just more comfortable. And they're, like I said, they're easily the most comfortable Pacific Northwest boots that I can think of off the top of my head right now, because I don't think anyone's even got close. And it's a lot of that's due to that really soft midsole. The downsides of that midsole is you don't get the same amount of like stability you get from a really rigid, thick counter, a hard heel, all that leather, that support, the shank. You don't get that locked in feel. It is a little bit more tippy because as you like put pressure on the outside, it will roll slightly because of all that foam. It's going to compress. Is it enough that I even noticed it? No. But when I'm looking for it and comparing them side to side as I'm wearing one boot on one foot and one on the other, you feel a little bit of a difference. And so that is the con of having such a squishy midsole is it's not quite as supportive, it's not quite as much arch support, and it's not quite as stable underfoot, but it's super comfy. And so I'm fine with it. You know, I love it. I think it's so comfy. Some people might rather have like a more rigid and all those other things, but like for me in this collaboration, nailed it. It's perfect. The leather insole takes forever to break into, and obviously the one thing I did, shameless plug, is I just throw boot breakers in every single Pacific Northwest boot now because these are so thin. They're 2 millimeters thick, just high impact foam with the abrasion resistant fabric on top, and they're like $20 because we're not trying to like artificially pump the price of something. It's like they're priced fairly. They're $20. We cut them out here in the shop. We hand screen print them here in the shop. And that adds just enough squish so that leather insole still compresses to the shape of your foot. Because if I reach down in here, you can see the toe, or feel the toe prints. And we'll probably put it in the B-roll, if we even have time for B-roll, because this is a pretty comprehensive video. So let me know what you think of this longer format review too, because I'm just letting it go. And we're probably just gonna mostly swap between A-roll and B-roll cameras. So let me know what you think of this, because I'll do more. I'll talk for an hour if you let me. But you can still feel that imprint inside of the shoe. You can still wear them without just fine. And but that is the preferred way of doing it, is putting the boot breaker insoles in there. And so I haven't talked to Nix about this, but I'm gonna see if Nix is okay with me giving you guys a half off discount for boot breakers. So you get a pair for like $10. You throw in your ND4s. So if you're an ND4 owner, be on the lookout for that email, because I'm gonna email you the code so it doesn't get out and we sell a bunch more than we sold of the ND4s. But it makes a big difference, and that really improved the squish, like from where my foot touches the boot, because the squish on the ground from the boot to the ground, plenty of squish, but the actual hard surface you're standing on, you know, use a little bit of squish in there. But at the end of the day, you know, it's still that leather midsole. It's still really thick, still breaks in, still gonna last a long time. And so I'm really happy with the insole. I think there's really nothing to change there, except for getting a little boot breaker. It's only a half shameless plug, because it really does improve these boots and any of these Pacific Northwest boots. Oh, another aspect is because we with this pattern and the sole combination and the 360 stitch down, all these little things that we did lighten these boots just tiny bit by tiny bit, a few ounces here, a few ounces there, to a point where this boot is the lightest Pacific North. This is the lightest indie boot of all that we've done out of the four. You know, it's like easily the lightest, and it's significantly lighter than the ND3 actually. So it's most comfortable. It's the lightest. It's probably one of the more versatile and actually wearable ND4s, because we had to combine it with the opposite of an ND4, which is a jungle boot. It's like, it's fabric and canvas. It can wear out. You know, it's lightweight. It's supposed to be breathable. All these things. And so we didn't want to bring it so far to the jungle boot side that you lose a lot of the Pacific Northwest attributes. But no matter what, there's still compromises. Like, these aren't the most durable Indy series. They're still gonna be more durable than like 99% of boots on the market. But compared to the other Indy series, it's the least durable, but the most comfortable. It's the stitch down construction, the more modern build, which is less traditional, but you get more of the flexibility, the lightweightness, and all those attributes that we talked about. And then we talked about the boot pocket kit, super easy to sew on. We'll put links to those if you want one of these, but if you have an ND4, they're being shipped with them. And I love the black eyelets, I love the black tongue, I love the leather choices, I love it all. So what are the negatives? What are the downsides? There is a chance that this upper is not going to be as durable as a single really heavy leather upper. And I'm saying a chance because if I were to say which is going to be more durable, probably the full leather, that's like the work boot leather. But the cool thing about this is, like I mentioned, like this panel doesn't end here and then end here. It's one big panel that wraps all the way underneath. So it's like you took a regular boot and put this heavier exoskeleton frame around it. So I don't see it failing really fast or really easily, because you can even see that is still tied in through the eyelets and through the stitching there. But it is a lighter leather. It's more flexible, and so there is a chance that it could fail sooner than like their one of their really heavy duty dedicated work boots. Another aspect to it is that it's just a Pacific Northwest boot. Like this is never going to be as light as like a jungle boot. It's never be as flexible. It's never going to have any of the really far end of the spectrum value and attributes that jungle boots have, because it's that hybrid. It's the chimera of the Pacific Northwest and the jungle boot. But it's never going to be light. It's never going to be as breathable. It's never going to be as not going to have the vent holes. And so there is those negative aspects to it too. And then what about sizing? You know, we have a sizing guide. I'll put links to the sizing guide below. This is the Munson Last. I'm a 10D on the Brannock, and I went with a 9.5D, and I'm happy with it. It's perfect. You know, it's that extra width that you get from here. This Munson Last, instead of it being cut off here, instead of being cut off here and brought in here, you've got all that extra room. And so I didn't need to go any wider than my true to Brannock. So half size down from Brannock, true to width, seems to work fine for me. And same thing with H&W Last if you end up getting one of those. The break-in, that's another thing. The break-in of these, I thought honestly the Bear Slayers were going to be like the easiest Pacific Northwest boot to break in, but the ND4s were easier. You know, there was one point that the Bear Slayers were better at, right here over the instep, that bite you get. The Bear Slayers solve this a lot more because you have those like flex teeth in here. And then the upper is about as easy to break in as the Bear Slayers. So like the quarter panel's up, pretty similar in break in, but the thinner counter of the ND4, easier to break in than the harder, thicker counters. The paneling and the windowing definitely made it flexible enough that it felt similar to just a straight Bison. And the Munson Last compared to like this 4811 Last that's similar to White's 4811. What do they call this last? Whatever JK calls this last, it's similar to the 4811. It's not as anatomical. And so you don't have to bulge out as much. You don't have to spread the leather out and all that stuff. So just break-in of the actual shape is a lot easier. Break-in was a lot easier just because of the hardness underfoot with the two different outsoles. But the biggest one of all is the difference in all that built-up leather on the inside. Like I've mentioned like 3 times, like this has all those layers, like the arch support, the half shank, or like this lineman shank, half midsole, the full-length insole, and it does build up that arch like no other boot, the Pacific Northwest boots do, but especially the Bear Slayers where you've got this extra panel wrapped underneath. And so this felt more like just breaking in a regular boot underfoot, but it's a little bit harder because you have that leather insole. This felt like breaking in a Pacific Northwest boot underfoot. And so that's a big part of why they're so much more comfortable and easier to break in than Bear Slayers, even though the Bear Slayers are like pretty easy to break in, especially compared to Pacific Northwest boots. And honestly, even with the Bear Slayers, like we still take people's opinions into consideration because I like the unit sole on this because it allows you to just simplify the construction. No nails going up through the heel, less components, easier to resole, lighter weight, more squish because you have the voids in the heel. But this was an example of people seemingly being upset at nothing because they're like, oh, I would never buy a boot with a solid sole without a leather heel stack. Meanwhile, like half the Pacific Northwest boots have moved away from that. They're going with more like wedge soles, unit soles, like this style of combo sole. But that being said, you know, it's like we're looking at doing the more like old school way of the OT boot with that little wedge or that little layer of leather in the heel because it does look better. You know, it's a better looking way of doing the heel. But it is heavier. You have more nails going to the inside, more weight, less squish because you don't have quite as much room in there for that rubber to squish. It's a harder compound than this honey Vibram. So that's another one where it's like, yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. You know, like comments were like, you should have done this. I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree, but it didn't fit with this initial concept as well. But now that I know people are like, no, I want that. I'm like, yeah, I kind of do too. So maybe we just do it. And so the Bear Slayers, we also might take some of that critique and criticism and apply it because, you know, it's like they're collaborations. Half the fun is taking people's opinions and like improving them over and over and over to the point where you just have like the perfect version of the boot. Because that's what it's about. Like, yeah, we make money at it. We get to work with the coolest brands in the entire world, making the highest quality stuff. But the internal thing that I love most is that creative process. It is the iterations. It's the trying to solve a problem in a new way that no one's ever done before, trying to solve a problem no one's solved before, trying to improve on a time-honored product that's just never been touched, and trying to change it and improve it and bring it more to the more modern way of doing things. That's the fun. It's that creative expression. And so getting feedback and changing things is right in line with what I love about this. And so I think that's pretty much it. You know, I think we went through some pretty good information when it comes to the actual collaboration process, how we do things, the pros and cons of the ND boot or the ND4. And obviously it's a pretty gushing review because I designed it, and this is on Rose Anvil too, and it's fun to just geek out about something you designed. Like, not everything has to be like, you got to point out every little, and it's like, yeah, or I just get to like talk about something I love that I designed with a brand that makes some of the highest quality stuff in the world. And that's what this is. And so I still think we pointed out plenty of negatives. I still think it was a valuable video. And if you want a pair of these, their limited quantities are available now. If it's sold out by the time you're watching this, just get on the limited edition email list I'll put below, because anyone on the limited edition email list knows well ahead of time what we're releasing next. They get a lot of exclusive content. They get the sizing guide before the launch. They get the how to wear before the launch, the specs, so that you have everything you need to know, so that when it actually does go live, all you have to do is click your little size, the width, order, and then you're done. You don't have to deal with the chaos of the public launch when the site crashes. You don't have to worry about them selling out before you get a chance. And not that that will always be the case, because they're selling out faster and faster. But so far, we haven't really had anyone on the limited edition email list miss out on a pair of boots that wanted a pair, for the most part. And so even if you're watching this 6 months from now, there's probably another one in the works. And like I mentioned, I love this pattern so much. I'm going to try to get Nix to re-release this a few times with some new setups, some new leather combinations, because this panel, or this exoskeleton with the softer leather underneath works so well. If you want anything that we talked about, like the boot pocket kit, our kill tees, like obviously Nix makes their kill tees. They have their leathers available on their site. We have our kill tees. Yeah, so check out all that stuff. Check out our handmade leather goods that gave me the expertise I need to be able to judge quality at a high level, being a leather worker for the last 10 years, working with all the tanneries. And I think we make some pretty awesome products. You know, like our harness, our camera harness that's made to hold one camera really ergonomically. Instead of all that weight being around your neck, it distributes it across an entire harness. That was pulled a lot of inspiration from backpacking and from like gun holsters and that whole world, applied it to the camera industry and made a truly unique design enough that the patent office was like, yep, that's your design. We agree it's unique enough that we'll give you a patent. Here's your patent. And those have been selling like crazy. Like, we've sold, that Twister video has made that specific harness sell better than any product that we had on the site since Twister's released. It's completely like blown those up. So thank you guys for your support of that harness. I'm sure some of you guys watching this bought one of those. Thank you for supporting these collaborations, because not only do I get to sit down for 45 minutes and geek out about some of the finer aspects, I don't get to talk about the main channel, talk about like what worked, what didn't work, what's coming out in the future. It's only because you guys support these collaborations. And it's only because of the brands that are willing to do this, because you guys support them. You support the collaborations, the sponsors that help this channel, the handmade leather goods. All that makes this possible, because this is not easy for Nix to do. Like, this is way more sewing. They only make 500 of them. You know, they could sell 500 of any other boot, but they're willing to go above and beyond and just make the most ridiculous over-the-top boots with the whole ND series is ridiculous. The workers are saints for being willing to make these boots. And so huge shout out to Nix, and especially the production crew that has to put up with making these. And yeah, it's just really cool. It's literally a dream come true to be able to design this kind of stuff and work with these brands. So I appreciate everything you guys do. And that's it. So see ya.